Welcome to Food for Thought, the place to explore, celebrate, and manifest a life motivated and defined by unconditional compassion and optimal wellness. Today's episode is The Greatest Thing Since Sliced Bread, Words from the Staff of Life. Before we begin, I hope that piques your curiosity. My name is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. You can find me at joyfulvegan.com. You can find my books wherever books are sold, and you can join me in my online cooking classes or on my vegan trips around the world. And as always, this podcast is possible because of supporters like you. There are no sponsors or ads on Food for Thought. With your help, I can keep doing this podcast and keep it ad-free. If it is something you value, please join other supporters by going to patreon.com/Colleen Patrick-Goudreau to become a supporter today at your chosen level. This podcast is in its 15th year, and it has always been supported by listeners. We've had sponsors here and there, but it has always been fundamentally, foundationally supported by you. One of the perks is a discount to my virtual cooking classes, so check your Patreon account for those coupon codes. And another perk is that you get the transcripts to the podcast episodes. And for word-related episodes like this one, they come in very handy. So thank you so much in advance for supporting this podcast, for subscribing to this podcast, and for listening. And thanks for sharing and leaving ratings and reviews. They help so much. There is a friendly neighborhood dog who has decided to join in this episode, so hopefully you enjoy him in the background. I wrote this episode from Italy, though I'm recording it from Oakland, California, and I hope you vicariously enjoyed the trip to Italy along with me if you follow me on Instagram or Facebook. After 2 years of no travel and canceling our Joyful Vegan trips, we were thrilled to be able to run our Joyful Vegan Tuscany trip in October of 2021. Of course, we are not alone. So many of you have also had to put off travel and trips, and it was just so healing and felt so good to be able to get out and go to a place I love so much. Stay tuned for an episode on vegan travel to Italy during a pandemic. I am working on that episode as well, but suffice it to say, it was a magical trip, despite the anxiety and anticipation leading up to the trip, as this was our first time traveling since COVID-19 rocked our world. It's been really challenging for all of us. And this wasn't just David and I traveling. This trip was a Joyful Vegan trip, and of course that added to the stress. But the bottom line is that all of our travelers arrived in Italy without a hitch. All 20 of us had an amazing time. All 20 arrived home safely and happily and COVID-free. And we're running the same Joyful Vegan Tuscany trip in June 2022. And we're also running Joyful Vegan Northern Italy. That trip is called Mountains, Lakes, and Canals. That's in June of 2022. And that trip is almost full. And it's going to be amazing. I knew that before, but now I really know it firsthand because after our week in Tuscany, David and Bridie and Seb, they're our partners at World Vegan Travel, and I headed up to the lakes and mountains of northern Italy, scouting the area, staying in the hotels and eating at the restaurants that we're going to be treating our travelers to. And I'm telling you, you don't want to miss this trip. We're traveling to a part of Italy most North American travelers never come to. And if you want to spend time in this incredibly beautiful place, dramatic place in the fresh mountain air, eat at a Michelin star restaurant, see the Italian Alps, stay and hike in the Dolomites, enjoy ridiculously quaint little towns, and stay at vegan villas and hotels with me, then head over to joyfulvegantrips.com right now to book your spot. There are only 4 spots left. We will be hiking together. We'll be spending 10 long summer days in the mountains together, riding gondolas in Venice together, and eating truly the most delicious food. And by the way, Venice I hadn't been to Venice before. Venice has become probably my favorite city in Italy, which I know sounds dramatic, but it is true. So we end the trip in Venice, and it's going to be quite magical. So get over to joyfulvegantrips.com, and I hope you can join me. And speaking of food, I will be teaching 2 virtual cooking classes to end this year. One, a Thanksgiving feast, and the other the joy of holiday baking. The menu for Thanksgiving is butternut squash timbales, holiday cranberry relish, golden gravy, and an autumn cocktail. And for the baking class, we'll be doing chocolate dipped mushroom meringues. So if you want to make meringue cookies, which are incredible and beautiful, they're shaped like mushrooms. They're so pretty. They're perfect for making some kind of Yule log or adding as decoration or just serving on their own. So delicious. We're making gingerbread cookies, cinnamon rolls, and a holiday nog. So go to joyfulvegan.com/classes and sign up. The classes are super fun, and of course you can always get a gift certificate for people you think would be interested in these classes as well. So in Tuscany, I taught a cooking demo, and I will be doing a cooking demo also on the Northern Italy trip. And one of the things that's so spectacular about Italy, I've talked about this in past episodes, and I will talk about it again in the episode I'm writing about vegan in Italy during a pandemic, is that all of the dishes are made with ingredients that are local to the region. And the cuisine is so regional that you could go just a few miles from one region to the next and you have completely different dishes on the menu. That is one of the many best things about Italy. It's one of my favorite things about Italy. And every single meal we had at our Tuscan villa, and it's going to be the same thing with our Northern Italy trip, featured food from surrounding farms, or in the case of the villa we stayed at in Tuscany, from their own gardens. And everything we ate was traditional Tuscan cuisine. For my cooking demo in Tuscany, I decided to show our group how to make panzanella, which is a traditional summer Tuscan dish that you've no doubt heard of, possibly made, possibly eaten. It's essentially a bread salad that uses day-old bread, plus garden vegetables and garden herbs. Now, it's common in, I'm going to venture to say, every culture to have recipes for day-old bread or stale bread because, well, without romanticizing the past too much, as you know, I call pasturbation, there was a time when people really did use up every bit of food they had and would never think of throwing it away. Yes, some of that was due to food insecurity and limited resources, but it was also generally a shared mentality that you ate everything you bought. You ate everything you brought into the home, including bread. Why bread? Because bread has been a staple in every culture's cuisine for thousands of years. Whatever the grain, rye, could be barley, could be wheat, could be millet, sorghum, corn, whatever the grain, whatever the raising agent, could be yeast, sourdough, starter, what have you, or lack thereof, a lack of a raising or rising agent, whatever the shape, however it was baked, however it was eaten with whomever it was eaten, bread has played a significant role in our human culture, so much that words for bread infiltrate the English language as well as many other languages, but I'm only focusing on English here because that is my native language. And the title of this episode was called Words from the Staff of Life, because it is such a staple in our culture, in our human culture, that it really has been considered the staff of life, a staple in our history. So I thought it would be fun to share these words with you because it's fascinating. These are words you use every day. And also because we're so often bombarded with declarations about how significant animal-based meat is and animal products in our human history. Let's talk about plant-based food, this plant-based food, and how significant it is in our human history and in our language. So let's get started. Let's start with panzanella, since that was our segue, and let's talk about this food staple that has helped shape who we are as humans and how we talk as English speakers. If you've ever studied a Romance language, or speak it perhaps, like Spanish or Italian or Portuguese or French, you are probably familiar with the fact that the word pan is a Latin word meaning bread. Now, I mentioned this panzanella is a bread salad. It's native to the Tuscany region in central Italy. The zanella part of the word is of unknown origin. It may refer to a word for the bowl the salad would be served in, but it's not certain. But pan is certain. It means bread. Now, while it is bread salad in Italy and it started in Tuscany, depending on the region you're in, there are different recipes for panzanella. In Tuscany, for instance, the bread is left to soak in water. You can also soak it in some vinegar water, and then it's wrung out. You squeeze out the water, you add the chopped vegetables, and you mix it with herbs and oil, vinegar, and salt and pepper. So that's how you do it in Tuscany. In Umbria, the slices of the bread are wet, but they're not crumbled. So it's kind of more like a bruschetta. And in some areas, you don't have to soak the bread. You can make it more toasted. You can crisp it up a bit and then add your additional ingredients. All that's to say, recipes for panzanella abound. You can find one in my book, The 30-Day Vegan Challenge, and it really is one of my favorite recipes. It's so perfect in the summer when the tomatoes are at their freshest and you have just fresh herbs and vegetables from the garden. It's truly a summer dish, although you can certainly make this other times of the year, but I think it's best when the tomatoes are in season. So that's panzanella. It literally means bread salad. You can see it right in the word. Another bread-related word from Italian that you are familiar with is panini. It's essentially a sandwich with grilled vegetables, avocado. Sometimes the bread itself, the sandwich itself, is quickly grilled in what we call a panini press, right? Now, English speakers tend to talk about panini as if it's a single item, but truly, if you know Italian, you know that panino is the singular and panini refers to the many. So panino is what is the proper way to talk about this single sandwich, a panino, but a panini refers to many sandwiches. The word panino is short for Italian panino imbottito, which means stuffed bread. So panino imbottito means stuffed bread, but we just call it panini or panino. It's from pane, meaning bread, and imbottito, meaning to stuff. So panzanella and panino. We also have panforte. It's a rich confection. It originated in Siena. We were in Siena, for those of you who are with us and want to join us next year. Siena is an incredible city, and panforte originated in Siena. It contains nuts, most often almonds, candied peel, honey, and spices that are baked to form a hard, round, flat cake. Italian panforte comes from pane, meaning bread, and forte, meaning strong or heavy or solid. Now, I have a recipe for panforte in The Joy of Vegan Baking. I've had it in there for now, however long that book's been around, 15 years, and I use agave instead of honey. But that is what panforte is, coming from the word pan, meaning bread. Panettone is another Italian bread-related treat. You've probably seen panettone. I feel like I see it in Trader Joe's all the time in a box. It's a festive yeast cake that's flavored with candied fruit peels and raisins, and that comes from the word pan, again, meaning bread. It's a small loaf. So it comes from panetto, which is a diminutive of pane, meaning bread. So you've got panzanella, panino or panini, you've got panforte, and you've got panettone. So these are all Italian words that came right into English, and we didn't change them at all. We, not me. I had nothing to do with it. But that's a loan word. These are all loan words that are called calques in linguistics. So a calque is a word that comes in from another language that's not translated at all. And so you can hear that in these words. We call them panzanella. We call them what they were in the language they originated in. But we do have English words with the Latin word pan, meaning bread, that's a little more hidden and flanked by other words. Now, before I continue with this, I want to just say that you might have this question. So in anticipation of this, I want to answer it for you. Not all words that have pan in them are referring to the pan that comes from Latin panis, meaning bread. You also have pan from Greek, meaning all. And you would know this if you know pantheon and panorama and pantomime, pantheism, panacea. These words all come from the Greek word meaning all. So just know that when you hear the word pan or you see it in a word, it may refer to bread, it may refer to the Latin panis, it may not. But I hope this episode still just piques your curiosity, because that's how all that really fun investigation starts, is when you say, wait a second, what is that? What does that root mean? Is that related to this? Is that related to that? And it really helps you understand the meaning of a word when you understand the etymology. So that's just to say that just because you hear pan doesn't mean it means bread, but here is a case where it does. If you think about keeping company with a companion such that you share a meal with them, maybe a meal of panzanella or panini, you can see this Latin word for bread very clearly in the words company and companion. Right? Do you see it? A person with whom you shared your bread was a companion, combining the Latin prefix com, C-O-M, meaning with, and that word panis, meaning bread. So the word companion literally meant, or literally means, it literally meant originally with bread, or more specifically, the person with whom you shared bread. Several companions together form a company using that same construction. And if you accompany your companion on a trip to the bakery to buy bread, to eat that bread in the company of others, you can see what I'm saying here. All of these words, company, companion, and accompany, are all built from the Latin word panis, meaning bread. That's how essential bread is in our culture and in our history, is that a companion literally meant the person with whom you shared bread. And where do you keep that bread after you buy it with your companion? Perhaps in your pantry, which is a small room or closet where you might store food. You might also store tableware or linens or towels, but originally it would have been the bread closet, coming into Middle English from Old French, panettone, meaning bread closet, from, again, originally pan, from Latin panis, meaning bread. So even though we use the word more broadly today to speak of a place we may store many different types of food or even linens, originally it was a bread closet. And what is one of the things you might store in that pantry? How about panko? Panko is basically plain breadcrumbs. It's used especially to create like a crispy coating on fried foods. It was invented during World War II by the Japanese, and the word is built on the word pan, meaning bread, and ko, meaning small pieces. That's what panko is. So you see that word panko all the time, and you probably knew it had to do with bread, but there you go. There's another word that might not be familiar to you, but it is still in common use, and that's the word pannier. Pannier, and you can see pan right in the beginning there, meaning bread. A pannier refers to a large wicker basket, especially one of a pair of baskets carried on the shoulders of a person or on either side of a pack animal. You would imagine this being on a mule or a donkey. Not that I would ever put them on a mule or a donkey unless they wanted to carry it, but also one of a pair of bags slung on either side of the back of a motorcycle or bicycle, right? So you can picture that, right? That's called a pannier, and it comes from Middle English pannier, from Old French, from Latin panarium, which means bread basket. So that comes from bread, pannier. A pannier is a bread basket. And then you might put bread in a pannier, or you might put a box of pastille. It's a word of French origin to refer to a small medicated or flavored tablet. It's essentially a small, flat, usually round, sweet, often coated with sugar and sometimes medicated. So it's basically a lozenge. It refers to any sweet of a similar shape. And that's called a pastille. And it comes from the Latin pastilus, coming from the word bread, actually, meaning little loaf. So if you just search for pastille, you'll see exactly what I'm talking about. You're like, oh, okay, I never realized that came from the word that means bread. It means little loaf. And that's a good segue to bread-related words that come not from Latin, but Old English. Now, this may blow your mind a bit, because when I first heard this, it blew my mind, and I still think it's so much fun, and I hope you do as well. The Old English word for bread was not bread. The Old English word for bread was, well, in Old English, it would have been pronounced hlaf. HLAF, that would have been pronounced cloth, so the H would have had some sound to it. And that's the word that became loaf, Loaf today. That's how we spell it. But it was originally chlaf. The male head of the household was known as the Loaf Guardian or the Loaf Warden. Okay, kind of in the way we say that someone today would be a breadwinner. In Old English, that term was not loaf warden, it would have been hlafwerd. You can see the warden in the Old English word weard, weird, right? So lafwerd basically meant the loaf guardian, the loaf warden. Now that compound words, by the way, are very, very common in Old English. This is basically a compound word. That compound word gets shortened down. So you've got lafwerd, which gets shortened down to laford, which is Laford. So you've got both the laf and the word in there, and that gets shortened down, which you could probably mimic if you say it fast enough several times. And you can do this at home. Laford becomes the word Lord. Lord, in its origins, means the bread guardian, the loaf guardian, the loaf warden. Now it's hidden, but there it is, still in that word, Lord. Lady has a similar construction. So whereas the Lord was the bread winner, right, bringing the bread home, the lady was the bread maker. And so you've got a construction of also compound words, hlaf, so HLAF, that became loaf. And then there's a word that in Old English meant kneader, and that was a word DIGE. And so you can see the D is still in the lady, laf, DIGE, and that became lady. So you've got the breadwinner and you've got the bread maker. So Lord and Lady have bread in their origins. And if you're familiar with the August 1st harvest festival called Lammas, which is a Christian feast formerly celebrated in England, so if you're not in the UK, you might not be as familiar with it. But Lammas is basically a harvest festival during which the bread from the season's first wheat was consecrated at Mass in Thanksgiving for the harvest. So you can see the Old English word for loaf in there, from in the LA in Lammas, and then you've got Mass, so it was loaf Mass. I think people looking at that today might think it has to do with a lamb, but it does not. It has to do with bread. So it was the loaf Mass, the laf massa. So there you have three words, lady, lord, and lammas, based on the Old English word for bread, which was loaf, which was laf. Now there's another word in the English language that refers to the ritual of drinking to someone's health. And this is not in English only, it's in other languages as well. But the word we have for this ritual is a toast. What does toast have to do with drinking to someone's health? Toast referring to heated bread. So if you've ever thought about it, you were right to think, well, what does bread have to do with making this toast, with drinking to someone's health? It is related to bread. So toast is a French word. It first appeared in English in the late 1300s. And when it first appeared in English, it had the modern sense of exposing a piece of bread to heat, right? Thereby making it slightly brown and crunchy. So you might eat a piece of crunchy toast, but you might also make a toast to someone during a meal by having a drink in their honor. And this was the meaning of that word toast came in around the same time. The reason has to do with the fact that people often dipped bread in wine or ale and then ate it. This was an era when there was a lot of poor quality wine and ale, not that there isn't today, certainly is, and a lot of people thought that dipping bread into the wine or ale drew out the bad flavors, and it made the wine or ale taste better when you dipped bread into that wine or ale. Now, this was probably just one of those things that people said, and a lot of people believed it, even if it didn't really work, but it fostered this notion that toast or bread actually improved the flavor of those beverages. They tasted better with bread. So in the 1600s, it became common for people to have a drink in honor of the lady of the house, or the most prominent lady attending the dinner. And it was said that having a drink in her honor would also improve the flavor of the wine or the ale that was being served. So in that way, she was just like the toast that was dipped into the drink. They both made the drink taste better. And that connection between bread and drinking to someone's health led to the modern sense of the word toast as the act of having a drink in someone's honor. But it all began with pieces of bread that were broken off and dipped into the wine or ale. And essentially, that's actually the word bread comes from the same, it's actually cognated with the word break, because bread first originally referred to just pieces of a loaf, and then it became a general term for this yeasted grain-based food, and loaf became very specifically the shape in which you would make this bread. But bread originally does have to do with breaking off a piece. And so there you have it. Okay, the dog has stopped barking, but a little cat has just come into the room, just barreled her way in. And you may hear her as well if she wants to share her little voice. Michiko? Did you hear that? Oh, she's so cute. I thought I would just keep that in. Okay, so finally, we also have many expressions, bread-related expressions, which is no surprise considering how integral bread has been in our history. So just like the lord of the house, the warden of the loaf, if you provide for you and your family, you're the breadwinner. If you get together with some friends or companions and have a meal together, you might say that you're breaking bread together. Our daily bread is the food or the money that you need to live. Something that is your bread and butter is a vital component, right, of your life or of something else. If you're below the bread line, you're impoverished. The bread line refers to the line of people waiting for bread to be distributed to them or food to be distributed to them. Bread is the staff of life, which is the name of this episode. It's a proverb, meaning that one must eat in order to survive. To cast one's bread upon the waters means that you do good deeds without being motivated by a potential reward. Half a loaf is better than no bread is a proverb, meaning getting less is better than getting nothing at all. Having one's bread buttered on both sides, it means to receive two separate benefits or advantages from a particular situation, which is often deemed to be unfair or unreasonable, buttering your bread on both sides. The greatest thing since sliced bread, of course, is an excellent new invention. Know which side your bread is buttered is a proverb, meaning to be aware of where your money comes from, right? To be loyal to the person or the thing that will benefit you the most. Man or woman cannot live by bread alone is a proverb, meaning in order to live a happy, fulfilling life, a person needs more than just the basic amenities like food and shelter. Take the bread out of people's mouths is to steal or deprive people of their basic means of living. And we have many more expressions that have bread in them. We also have common surnames like miller, an Old English word that refers to the person whose trade is the grinding of grain into flour, right? That person works in a mill, another Old English word. Baker is also a surname that we still have today. And even though today we might use the word baker to refer to people who bake pastries and cakes, not just bread, it would have originally referred to baking bread. And that's a surname we still have today, referring to the person who bakes bread for a living. So there we have it. Words we use probably on a daily basis whose origins are rooted in bread. Panzanella, panino, panini, panforte, panettone. In English, we would just say Panforte and Panettone. Company, companion, accompany, pantry, panko, Pannier, pastille, lord, lady, lammas, and toast. So I hope that fascinated you as much as it fascinates me. I appreciate you listening and spending time in my company, even though it's one-sided, and I hope someday we can break bread together. For the animals, this is Colleen Patrick-Goudreau. Thank you for listening.